Tonight we're going to continue our study of the major and minor prophets, and we're taking a look tonight at Hosea. Hosea has a picture of the love of God. He's going to use marriage as an illustration of it, and some other illustrations as well. But he's going to be focused mainly on Israel, although Judah is mentioned, but he is focused primarily on Israel. In the timeline that we've been using, he comes right at the end of the time of Jonah. But here in the first verse of the book, it tells us that the word of the Lord that came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. But he starts off in verse 2. He says, when the Lord began to speak by Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, go take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord. So Hosea is one of these prophets who is going to have to act out certain things in his life as an illustration of the prophecy God is giving through him. And in his case, he's going to have to marry a woman of harlotry. Either that means she is a prostitute, or she has been promiscuous. She is not a virgin that he is marrying. And this is to illustrate the relationship between God and the land, in particular the nation of Israel. All right, in verses 3 through 5, it says, so he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to him, call his name Jezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. It shall come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. So Jezreel is a name that has a meaning. It means God sows or God scatters. And that seems to maybe have some significance with the prophecy, but the explanation of why he's named this has to do with the actual valley of Jezreel, which was in Israel, where sin was committed by Jehu and how he destroyed Ahab's household. And of course, he was commanded by God to destroy Ahab's household, but it seems to be the way that he went about it, and perhaps some of his motivation in doing it were not really approved by God. And so God is going to bring vengeance on him for that. And it says in the prophecy here in Hosea that it was where God would break the bow of Israel when the kingdom was destroyed. So it's a prophecy of that great valley where there's going to be a downfall of Israel. So that's the name of his first child. And then in verses 6 through 7, it says, and she conceived again and bore a daughter. Then God said to him, call her name Lo-Ruhamah. For I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah, will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword or battle, by horses or horsemen. So here he's saying, name your daughter Lo-Ruhamah, which means no mercy, isn't that a horrible thing to name your child? No mercy. Because he will not have mercy on Israel. But he says on Judah he will have mercy and he will save them. And this is a prophecy of when God is going to destroy the army of the Assyrians under King Hezekiah. He just sends an angel to wipe out a very large part of their army and make them go home. There was no battle. They didn't have to fight them. God just destroyed them. And that this is a prophecy of that. Here he says that's the mercy he's going to have on the house of Judah. But he's not going to have mercy on the house of Israel. He's going to utterly take them away. In verses 8 and 9, he says, now when she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah, she conceived and bore a son. Then God said, call his name Lo-Ammi, for you are not my people, and I will not be your God. So he calls his son not mine, Lo-Ammi. It sounds like he's an illegitimate child because Israel is not my people anymore, basically, and I will not be your God. That covenant is destroyed. You have broken the covenant. You're no longer my people. And so in verses 10 through the first verse of chapter 2, it says, "Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, there it shall be said to them, You are sons of the living God. Then the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, and appoint for themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Say to your brethren, my people, and to your sisters, mercy is shown." So he's now saying there's going to be something in the future that's going to reverse all of this. You're not my people now, but there will be a time when I'm going to say, where it will be said to you, you're the sons of the living God. And whereas Jezreel was where Israel's going to fall, they're going to be broken there. Now they're going to come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. It's going to become a positive thing. And he says, say to your brethren, my people, and to your sisters, the one named no mercy, say mercy is shown, or mercy, you have mercy. If we summarize a bit of the book, we find that Israel was like a wife who had left her husband for other lovers, who she thought gave her the fine things of life. That's what we're going to find in these next chapters. And she didn't know that those things came from her husband, that the fine things, the good things of life came from her husband, Jehovah, in this case. And that when she turned to Baal, she was taking what God gave them and giving those things to someone or something that didn't love them. They didn't provide anything for them. They were turning away from the one who gave them everything and giving credit for that to someone who did nothing for them at all, and even gave those things as sacrifices to Baal. So God was going to take those things away from her, just like a husband who is angry with his wife, turning to other lovers and giving them the things that he gave to her. He's taking those things away from her. And unlike the picture we have in Ezekiel, where he divorces his wife, in this book of Hosea, God does not divorce Israel for her unfaithfulness. So here the picture is just a little bit different. He is angry with her for her unfaithfulness. He's going to take away the things that he's been blessing them with. But God would gently call Israel back to himself, and she would consider him to be a husband again and forget the Baals. And God told Hosea, as part of this picture, we find that his wife had left him and had gone to other men, apparently, and even been sold or bought as a slave. And it says that God told Hosea to bring his wife back from where she'd gone in adultery. And Hosea had to buy her back. And then he restored their relationship of husband and wife. And she was faithful after that. That's what it looks like in this picture, that she was actually faithful to him after he brings her back, after she's been so unfaithful to him. And Israel would also be faithful to God after he brought them back from where they had been sold, which is captivity, the Assyrian captivity. And so this is clearly looking forward to the spiritual Israel under Christ, because it's talking about David being their king. Now, in a sense, after they return from the captivity, they are going to be faithful to God because they never turn to idols again. But he is looking even farther into the future at the time of the church, the spiritual Israel under David the king, who is Christ. And so that's where we who were unfaithful to God and yet have been shown mercy and grace and tenderness, we are to be faithful to him. So he brings some specific charges against Israel. He says there's no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land. He says they broke all restraint through swearing, lying, killing, stealing, and committing adultery. They had bloodshed upon bloodshed. He says they were destroyed for a lack of knowledge. But he also says that that's because they had rejected knowledge. It's not because they were not able to have that knowledge. They didn't want it. They rejected it. They were enslaved by harlotry, wine, and new wine. They were seeking counsel from wooden idols. Their daughters were committing harlotry, and their brides were committing adultery. But he says it's because of the idolatry they were practicing. And so apparently some of the men wanted God to punish their wives and punish their daughters for their sexual immorality. And God says, I'm not going to do that. I will not punish the women for their harlotry and adultery because the men were doing the same things. He was going to punish the whole nation. He's going to punish them all together and not hold the women as more responsible than the men. Men have just as much responsibility for their sexual purity as women do. And so even though Judah's leaders were not doing right, he talks about Judah's leaders, that they were not doing what was right. I don't think that's talking about Hezekiah, but there were other leaders who were not doing right. He says God was going to also punish them. But then he mostly focuses on Israel, who he also refers to as Ephraim. So as you read through the book, if you see Ephraim, he's not talking only about the tribe of Ephraim. They represent the whole northern kingdom of Israel. And he says that Ephraim, or Israel, saw that he was in trouble, and so he sent to Assyria for help. So this is before Assyria is attacking them. They're actually seeking help from Assyria, but he says they're not going to be cured by Assyria. And they will actually be captured by them, which he talks about later in the book. And they both seem like they turn to God for help. But it says that God sees their faithfulness as the morning cloud or early dew that goes away. He knows that their repentance is not genuine. They're not actually going to remain faithful. In chapter 6, in verses 6 and 7, it says, "For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. But like men, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt treacherously with me." They were coming to God in some sort of repentant posture, but they were offering sacrifices, but they were not showing mercy. They had burnt offerings, but they didn't have knowledge of God. God wanted them to know him. He wanted them to show mercy and to receive mercy, but they kept sinning. They were treacherous with God. And so they were not honest in what they were doing. If you do the things that seem to be, specific things that you think God wants you to do, but you don't actually know God, and you're not actually doing it with the right motives, you're being treacherous, you're just trying to get God to bless you somehow. Well, God knows that, and he's not happy with it. He's not looking for your sacrifice. He's not looking for burnt offerings. He wants mercy, something coming from the heart. He wants the knowledge of God. He wants you to know him. All right, and so he's going to bring punishments on them. There's going to be famine. There's going to be a lack of children. He talks about how they won't be giving birth, and even if they do, those children will die. They're not going to prosper. They're not going to have an increase in their nation. And the golden calf from Bethel would be taken to Assyria as a present for the king there. In chapter 10, in verses 12 and 13, he calls on them to sow for yourselves righteousness, reap in mercy. Break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord, till he comes and rains righteousness on you. You have plowed wickedness, you have reaped iniquity. You have eaten the fruit of lies because you trusted in your own way, in the multitude of your mighty men. They didn't trust God, they trusted themselves and their own strength. And so they're going to reap the benefit of that, which is iniquity. They're not going to get any good out of it. So he says, wake up, it's time to plow, break up the ground, but not physically. He's saying it's time to seek the Lord. And the rain you're looking for is righteousness. You need to sow righteousness so you can reap in mercy and get righteousness from the Lord. You can't get that by plowing wickedness. You can only reap iniquity from that. In chapter 11, in verses 1 through 4, he says, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Now, you may remember that that's mentioned in the book of Matthew as a prophecy of Jesus coming back out of Egypt where he was taken as a child. And here it's very clearly talking about Israel, but it's applied to Jesus in the New Testament. But here he talks about how he brought Israel out of Egypt. And he says, as they called them, so they went from them. They sacrificed to the Baals and burned incense to carved images. I taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by their arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I drew them with gentle cords, with bands of love, and I was to them as those who take the yoke from their neck. I stooped and fed them. He talks about how he raised them as a son. So now he's changed from the picture of a wife to a son. He was gentle with and raised them, and yet they rejected him and were not faithful to him as a son. When you get down to verses 8 and 9, he says, how can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, Israel? How can I make you like Admah? How can I set you like Zeboim? My heart churns within me, my sympathy is stirred. I will not execute the fierceness of my anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim, for I am God and not man, the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come with terror. So he says, I still love you as a son. I can't give you up. I can't totally destroy you. I have sympathy. But he is going to bring justice. When you get down to verses 10 through 12, he says, they shall walk after the Lord. He will roar like a lion. When he roars, then his sons shall come trembling from the west. They shall come trembling like a bird from Egypt, like a dove from the land of Assyria. And I will let them dwell in their houses, says the Lord. Ephraim has encircled me with lies, and the house of Israel with deceit. But Judah still walks with God, even with the Holy One who is faithful. So he says he is going to bring them back out of the captivity at some point. And he also says that even though Ephraim is just lying to me, they're not really repentant, they haven't really turned to me, but Judah still walks with God. So he goes back and forth with this, talking about Judah, because there was wickedness there, but there was also righteousness there. But in Israel, they were pretty much just wicked by this time. In chapter 14, in verses 1 through 3, he says, O Israel, return to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all iniquity. Receive us graciously, for we will offer the sacrifices of our lips. Assyria shall not save us. We will not ride on horses, nor will we say any more to the work of our hands, you are our gods. For in you the fatherless finds mercy. This is the call of Hosea. Return to the Lord. You can be saved from all of this. You can have your sin taken away. God will be merciful to you, but you have to turn away from trusting in other nations like Assyria on your own strength, these horses that their army would ride, and don't trust in your idols, saying that these are gods. You are going to need to turn to the one who shows the fatherless mercy, the true God, because that's where you are right now. You need mercy. All right, so when we look at this book, we find that God was the one who had done everything good for Israel. He had brought them out of Egypt. He had given them kings. And because they turned away from God, he was the one who would take everything good away from them. They would return to Egypt, or actually Assyria, and he would take away their kings. And he used the picture of an unfaithful wife as well as a son who rebelled against the father that raised him. But he kept promising that he would not completely destroy them. When they repented, he would heal them and bless them again. And of course, ultimately, the greatest blessings are going to be found in when David is king, the Christ. And we are the benefits of those great promises today. All right. Thank you, and I hope that helps you a little bit with understanding the book of Hosea.